it's Mindy from My Creative Scoop, and I'm back with another Copic marker tutorial for Neat and Tangled. This month I'm using this new stamp set called EGGCITING, and we are going to be focusing on light source. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to color is the bunny, and we're going to color him white. So we want to leave a white space, we just have to shadow with using our grays. So we're going to be using N5, N3, N1, and N0, and we're also going to be using R32 and R30 for the insides of his ears. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my N3 and let's get started on those shadowed areas. Now, if you want, first you have to think. So the bunny is pulling the egg and he's kind of leaning off to the side. So we're going to make the shadows all along this back side of him. So that's where I'm first going to lay down my N3. So right behind his ears, since his ears are down, they're going to be casting a shadow on his back. So I'm just going to kind of go right along the edge of the stamped image, also on the inside of the tail, right behind this front ear, onto the back ear, and then underneath the arm, on the back side of the legs, on the inside of this leg over here, and a little bit more underneath his arm onto his belly. And I will add just a little bit of a shadow underneath his, by his chin. So now we're going to take our N1 and we're just going to come in a little bit more. So I'm just going to lay my marker down right next to where I just laid that N3. And we're going to make that really, really deep shadow. I'm also going to come right on the edge of the inside of the ear and continue tracing all the way down. And a little bit on that other arm over there. Alright, so now we're going to take our N0 and we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to come up just a little bit right here because I want to leave that white. Since we are trying to make a white bunny, the trick to coloring white is just to leave a white space. So as long as we do that, then it'll still look white. If you're heavier handed and you don't have a lot of space, skip in between colors. Okay, so we have a really, really good defined shadow so far. So now I'm going to take my N5. This is, I call it my Make It Pop, because a little bit of this color really makes this shadow and will really make your image pop and stand out. So I'm just going to take it and just, because this is such a dark color and you can go really, really quickly to a gray bunny rather than a white bunny. So instead of coloring in a really thin line, just think of it as you're tracing the outline of the image. So I'm just going to trace along the back side of the ear, really making that shadow in the back really stand out. And then I'm going to come right down, tracing the outline all the way down, all the way down to his feet. And I'm just going to add a little bit of a shadow directly underneath this arm here. And that's it. Just a little bit of color really makes it stand out. Now to soften it up a little bit, instead of going back down all those same colors, since we don't really want to add that much color and we still want to keep that white space, I'm going to skip between colors. So instead of going N3, I'm going to pick up my N1. And I'm just going to go right along the side of that N5, just to kind of blur out that line and soften it up a little bit. And then I'm going to take my N0 and do the same thing. Alright, so now let's take that R32 and go on the inside of the ear just towards closer to the head and right at that edge. We really want this to look like it's going deep inside his ear so it's curving around. And then we're going to take the R30 and just fill it in. If you've lost a lot of color right there, if you want to go back and just deepen that R32, you can take your marker and just again trace that outline. Just adding that little bit more of definition back in there. Okay, so now for the egg, the shadow is going to, again, just like it was on the back side of the bunny here, it's going to be all on this side. Because he's pulling it over so that way it looks like it's leaning and the shadow on the floor is going to be going this way. So we're going to go ahead and color the details in for the egg. So this bottom piece here and this top piece here, I'm going to color pink. So I'm going to be using R85, R83, R81, and RV10. So I'm going to start with my R85, and it's going to be darker right in here. And then I'm also going to just make a little shadow right on each of those little scallop bumps, and the same thing over here. And then the shadow is going to be right here, so it looks like it's leaning. And then we're going to take the R83. I'm just going to come out just a little bit more. And then my R81. So just those two are going to be the highlight points, so that's what we're going to use with our next color. So all of this is going to be pulled over and blended out. And then we're going to take that RV10 and just fill in those white spaces. Now, since this is a kind of an off shade, the RV10 from the R80 colors, I'm going to go back with my middle color, so back with R83, and then do the same thing with R81, just so I can get a nice blend on that shade that's not necessarily in this color family. So again with my R81, and then one more time with that RV10. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead, I'm going to color right outside the little pink ends that we created there. I'm going to color them yellow. So I'm actually going to be using, it's like more, it's the Buttercup, it's the other yellows, like the Y11 and Y02, those are very neon, and I really want it to be a lot softer. So this is like banana yellow to me. So I'm going to take Y26 and Y21. I'm going to take out my Y26 first and just go right along the edge. And then it's going to not have so much color on the end right there. So I'm going to take my Y21 and pull out that Y26, filling the rest of that area in. And then I'm going to go back with my Y26 just to make it a little bit more defined. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and color the hearts, a couple of different colors. So I'm going to make that pink one in the middle, so R85 again, and I'm just going to color one side of the heart. And then my R83. And then my R81. I'm just going to fill it all in since there's not a whole lot of space there. And then let's go ahead and do one yellow one. So I'm going to take my Y26 and just color just the one side. Actually, let's do two yellows. So I'm going to do one over here. And then we'll take the Y21 and fill it in. To add a little bit more shadow to it, so I'm going to go back with my Y26 and just go back down that shadowed area where we first added that color. And then let's go ahead and do the other two. We'll do green. So I'm going to take my G85 and G82. So G85 first, and we're going to add those shadowed areas right same spots as we did the other hearts. And then we're going to fill it in with the G82. And let's go back and add a little bit more shadow using the G85 just on the one side of the heart. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and color our egg. I'm going to color it a BV color so it looks kind of like a purpley blue. So I'm going to use my BV02, BV00, BV000, and BV0000, so 4 zeros. I'm going to start with my BV02, which is my darkest shade, and this whole side of the egg is going to be the shadowed area. So I'm going to just lay a really thick line going all the way down and coming up over these little decorative ends there. So I'm actually going to make the shadow a little thicker towards the bottom. So it's going to come down at a little bit of an angle. And then I'm going to take my BV00 and I'm going to make it come out a little bit more along the bottom. And then come out just a little bit more going towards the top. And then I'm going to take my BV000 and now I'm going to come towards the bottom over here with this because it's turning. So we want this to be a little bit more shadow because it's still almost standing straight up and the highlight's going to be right over here. So come about to where the pink and the green one is, and then we'll take that BV4 zeros and we're going to fill the rest of the egg in. Now this is a lot lighter of a color, so you'll want to get a nice blend along the edge and then do the one swipe over. Well, a couple of little swipes. It's very, very highlighted right there. So now I'm going to repeat that because it always looks a lot better once you add a second coat, so that way we get all those colors going. So I'm going to start back with my BV02 and come all along the side of the Easter egg. And then my BV00. I'm going to do a heavy flick since we've already got a good amount of color down. It will blend nicely so that way you don't have that hard, sharp edge. And then my BV000. And then again with my BV4 zeros. Now let's go ahead and make that shadow just a little bit deeper. So I'm actually going to use my BV23. And I'm not going to come out as much as I did with that BV02, but this is going to have a really gray tone, so that way it really looks like a shadow, and I want it to have that dark shadow edge. And now I'm going to take my BV02 again and just soften up that edge from that BV23. And then we'll go a little bit with that BV00, just so it all starts pulling together. And let's add a little bit more BV000. And then BV40s. All right, so we have our Easter egg colored. Now we're gonna go ahead and work on the shadows on the ground. So we're gonna go ahead and create a ground using E33, E31, E30, and E0000, so 4 zeros. And then we're gonna create a little bit of grass patches, but I want the ground to be the dirt color so we can really work on that shadow. So we're going to take that E40s and we're first going to just kind of sketch out where we want it. So I'm just going to add some little scribbles where the shadows are going to be the darkest. So right at the base of the egg, and we'll have it come out behind him. So that's the ground. And now let's go ahead and scribble where the shadow is going to be, and also right around where the bunny is. So that way he has a nice shadow where he looks like he's leaning. Okay, so now we know where to add our darker colors. So I'm going to start with my E33, and right at the deepest part of the shadow, so right about the bottom, you're going to kind of give a little flick going out. And the same thing over here. And then we're going to continue to pull that through. So get your E31, and I'm going to come around a little bit more over here. This is just the darkest point. It still has to grow out this way a little bit. And you still want to create that egg shape. Now the bunny could be a little bit more where you're just kind of tracing around, where you're kind of eyeballing how his ears are going back. And then we're going to take that E30, and again we want to we're going to grow the shadow, so we got to come around a little bit more, rounding out that edge and creating that egg shape. And the same thing with the bunny. And then let's go ahead and take that E40s, that E0000, and we're just going to soften up those hard lines, and then we're going to continue to really define where the ground starts and where it kind of stops before we add part of our sky. So I'm just kind of running the marker all the way through, just giving it a little bit of a smudge, so that way it has a little bit of texture to it. Let's add a little bit more over here. Alright, so I think that looks good. I'm going to go back with my E30 just a little bit more. Add a little bit more to these shadows. You could kind of come out and add a little bit of texture lines. And then I'm going to take my E40s again and just kind of blur out those E30 lines that we just created. So now we are ready to do the sky. So I'm just going to be adding a little bit of blue, and I want to do that before we add our green grass, because if we go right along the side of the dirt and we end up pulling up some of that green, then we're going to have a big old green streak going across. So I'm going to start with my B00, and I'm just going to trace right at where the ground is. Make a couple of little flicks going up just right at the side of that line. Just giving a little bit of color. And then we're going to take that B40, so B0000, and I'm going to go back over that B00 so I get a nice good blend, and then I'm going to come up. Do the same thing on this side. And then all the way up. Same over here. You want to make sure you go back through where the ears are, so that way we blend that together. And then all the way up. So I'm going to go back with my B00 and just make it a little bit darker. So do the same thing. And then again with our B40s. Go back over that B00 and then pull the color through, and then again all the way up. So over that B00 again. That way it's just a nice soft subtle background. The egg really, really stands out. I love those Easter colors, those pastels. And you have that really deep shadow going along that back side of the bunny. Alright, so now we're ready to add a little bit of grass. So we're going to use the same colors, the G85 and the G82. I'm going to start with my G85, and I'm just going to make a couple of little flicks here and there for some grass blades. So we'll start over here, and I'm going to come down and just make them really sporadic and not... This is also a great way to, if you messed up any, or if you went a little dark, or you don't like that particular area, if you went a little bit in with the blue, this is a great way to cover up your mistakes. And then I'm going to take my G82, just come out just a little bit more, just give another little scribble here and there. All right, so now we are ready to stamp our sentiment. Okay, so here is my finished card. I absolutely love the way that it came out. The colors, they just scream spring and Easter, and you don't need a whole lot, especially when you put so much into your coloring. If you really want it to stand out, those simple cards are the way to go. I just popped it up with some foam tape and trimmed off the edges, so I have a little over 1/8, about 1/4 of an inch border with my card base. This was such a fun tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again next month. Thanks for watching.